that messaging on the website, it's who I am. It's not me pretending or, that is just me. That's who I am. There's photos all over of me and my dog and me being me. And the nature, like all those nature photos are photos I've taken in my local area. It's just, it is me. It is who I am. I want to show up authentically. Like that is so important to me.
Yeah.
That I am able to be me in the spaces that I'm in. And I'm still learning bits of who that is as I learn to unmask where it's safe and to find, 6 months ago, I would never have dreamed of like being open about a fidget and being able to step into that space and step into autistic and ADHD identity and really embrace that. And yes, there's lots of struggles and it's part of who I am. And I'm still learning bits about what that means. And that's okay. Like I don't have to have it all figured out.
You're listening to the Brave OT podcast with me, Carlin Nink. This podcast is all about empowering occupational therapists to step up, level up, blaze some trails, and maybe engage in a little conscious rebellion in service of our profession, our clients, our work, our businesses, and living our mission wholeheartedly. We are all about keeping it real, doing hard things, unhustling, being curious, exploring, growing through our challenges, and finding joy, fulfillment, and vitality as we do so. Really, we're OTing ourselves and each other. I hope you love this episode. This is part 2 of our discussion with Rebecca Rae-Hodgson, the Chronically Resilient OT. She shared a lot about her lived experience as an ADHD and Autistic OT who found her way to practicing OT in New Zealand while accommodating the energetic and nervous system regulation ups and downs of persistent mental and physical illness. In part 2, we discuss how she's crafting and curating her work to fit her strengths and needs in creative and brave ways.
I'm still getting comfortable, especially in that work setting and the employed work setting, about being more obviously neurodivergent.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, I'm a bit odd. They all know that. I've been able to be quite open with my manager, which is great. And I was really open in my job interview about some of my stuff as well. And that's something, being open in job interviews to the extent that you're comfortable with, but pitching it as a strength. I can work 2 days a week really effectively, or this experience of mine gives me much greater empathy and compassion and makes me a better OT. Instead of pitching it as a deficit, oh, sorry, I can only do this much. And like my body just went smaller as I did that. But actually it's like, this is what I can do. And of course, that's not going to work for every workplace. But just, that being able to be you rather than, and I'm still figuring that out for me, who that is, and just like learning about masking and that being something that I've done for longer than I can remember. And just,
I really relate to that freedom of also leaning into being who you are. And I've been thinking about it in terms of marketing too. So if I'm masking to try and meet what I perceive that other people want to hear, the work of continuing to be that person is effortful. Whereas if I can show up in my marketing as quirky as I am, as wiggly as I am, as meandering in my discussions as I am, the people who are comfortable with that or drawn to that are the ones that are easy to work with. It just makes my job easier. I can just continue to be me. And it just seems almost too simple. Is that the secret to finding the right people, is to just be you? What? It can't be. I've been looking for this secret sauce for so long.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you put a persona out there that's not you, well, then you just have to keep being that persona.
Yeah.
Right? And there's still obviously a balance. Like
Sure.
I'm still trying to find that with the social media stuff, especially. It's like, what do I share and how open do I be? Because absolutely, I want to break down barriers and break down stigma. And I still need to live in my world.
Yes.
And be a professional. And absolutely, I can be a professional with my own needs. That's not what I'm saying. But just, there might be some things that I'm not going to talk about. And at the same time, the being vulnerable and open is what people really resonate with. So it's
And I think it's that fine balance of that you sharing not in the moment. So you, while you're having the meltdown, when your husband has his headphones on in the other room, you probably shouldn't write a post about that in the moment, right? It's a large rant. It might be powerful, but perhaps it's better in a reflective moment the next day or the next week to say, I had this experience in high, like I can see this is what it felt
Mm.
like. But I think there's often the secret is in the pause and
Yeah.
reflect. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just trying to, what I'm really focusing on this month is how to find a better balance.
Yeah.
So with my employed role, things are hopefully settling a bit, and that will get a bit more kind of stable in what the hours are.
Yeah.
And then ideally, I think it's actually worked this week, is today and Friday I'm at home
Yeah.
and I don't have any appointments and I don't have anything else on. And so then I can actually have time, because we're on land. There's lots of things to do to maintain gardens and to grow food and to have things function in our day to day. There's study I need to do. There's personal learning that I want to do. And I've got a Trello board full of blog and graphic ideas
Of course you
and
do,
things
because
that
that's so exciting. Yes.
I pop it in there. Yeah. It's just, yeah, I love how much I love that content creation and being really aware of not overdoing it. Like, I remember in April, I did I was going to write a blog on this, but I did a post saying, hey, I need to put some balls down. And one of those is going to be stepping back a little bit from social media.
Yeah.
And then a week later, I'd made a graphic and done a blog post.
Yeah.
And it was like putting that down gave me the space to do some more.
Yes. Yes.
And I realized that's not necessarily the way I want to show up. And I talked to this friend of mine, the one who sparked my OT passion, and she called me out on it. And I'm really glad she did, because I don't have to post something as soon as I create it.
Mm.
It can actually just hang out. And I think it's that that impulse control possibly from ADHD is like, I made this and I want to show it.
And because when you have the enthusiasm, it's actually effortless to share, right? Because
Yeah,
it's so exciting.
and it's effortless to create as
Yeah.
well in
Yeah.
those moments. So in
Yeah.
April, it was definitely getting to I've got to create. And so it was like, okay, I actually need to pull back from this
Mhm.
because I don't want this to turn into a chore. You know, stuff will go up when it goes up. Like, I've just released a new workshop. We're recording this in May. So
Mhm.
not workshop, worksheet. I've just
Mhm.
released a new worksheet. And if that's all that goes up new on the website this month, that's fine. Like,
Mhm.
I'd like to be writing a blog a month, but it's also not a fixed thing for me, because I want to be writing because I want to,
Mm.
not because I feel this external pressure that people expect me to be creating content and showing up and supporting me and practicing what I'm talking about
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
That's really important to me, that authenticity and that showing up.
Do you find that because so much of the social media advice we get, marketing advice, is to be consistent, and to be consistent, I find it's my experience that suddenly I have resistance to it. Even if I've decided on the whatever consistent should be, I'll still even resist my own structure. But I hear that and I feel it the same way of that. But how do I want to show up? Like, I want to be reliable. I want people to see me as a resource. Does that mean I have to do 3 posts a week, though? No, probably not. Can I disappear for a couple weeks? Yeah, people probably won't even notice, right? And finding out that balance between what is values aligned in showing up, but what is also kind of BS advice that maybe just isn't going to apply to us because it won't be sustainable.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm still very much trying to figure that out, because at the moment I am on every day. I may not be like writing my own post every day, but I like to share and amplify and have a really diverse, like, I curate my feed with the people I want to see and trying to make sure that's as diverse as possible. And then using my platform to then be able to kind of lift some of those smaller pages as well. So I'm using it for that as well, but it still means that I'm on it every day. And it means that I'm often on Facebook. If I'm going to be super honest, it's sometimes 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
And that is too much.
Yeah.
And I haven't yet figured that bit out. for myself on how to, because I'm still learning as well. It's a way that I learn.
Yeah.
With reading other people's things, or they've written a thing and then I go to that and then,
Yeah.
oh, that really resonated, so I'll share it. So it's very much how I'm finding community and learning for myself. I
Yeah.
just listened to an amazing talk on PDA and addiction and neurodivergence from the PDA Summit. And they went very simply over the concepts like monotropism and the double empathy problem and all of these concepts, which I'd heard of and I kind of knew, and then that linked into drug addiction. And it was just such a fascinating learning. Like the time on Facebook isn't wasted. And again, but
No.
that goes into a weird productivity mindset as well. What is wasted? Sometimes I actually need to regulate by scrolling Facebook.
Yeah.
That's actually how I kind of wind down, because my brain is too active. And if I try to sit in silence, I won't rest.
Yeah.
But if I am doing something, then maybe my body can have a bit of a rest. So it's this, everyone's like, oh, you're spending too much time on Facebook, and oh, you could just schedule all your posts and stuff. Well, if I just scheduled my posts, I'd miss out on a bunch of awesome content from people that I really respect. And I'd miss out on a bunch of learning and a bunch of being able to kind of use, because my page is like, I had 70 followers in January. I now have over 3,500, which
my goodness.
seems like I don't even know how that happened.
Yeah.
But that's a responsibility that I take really seriously, is having that platform and showing up as a disabled OT. That's a real responsibility to people who follow me and to people who might be learning from me, to be curating what I share.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be seeing what other people are posting. And I'm still like, I struggle to get off it in the nighttime to go to bed is my biggest sticking point at the moment.
And
so
I
like,
think
just a bit more.
Yes, totally. And this is exactly what I think is 'cause I relate to all of the things. I think about like, I can think about a bunch of rabbit holes I ended up where I'm like immersed in a topic for a year, and I'm gaining so much knowledge from reading in a Facebook group or a few Facebook groups, like fermenting, for instance, fermenting food. I learned so much through Facebook, or OT business, learned so much through being in all of these OT entrepreneur groups and things like that. And exactly like that avoidance, like just sort of zoning out, going into shutdown mode, scrolling. I also feel that when I'm doing that, but it's that shift into it now feels compulsive that I can't stop. Like there's the behavior driving the ship versus being intentional about it. And I also I struggle to find, because it by nature is addictive, right? Like it's giving us the dopamine that we're needing more of, but then we can't stop to go do it elsewhere. And finding that sweet spot of still being able to use it for all it's good, but not be driven by it. I have not discovered an answer yet either.
Yeah, and it's something that I'm working on, and some days are easier than others.
Yeah.
I find things really shift with my menstrual cycle in terms of my sleep and my mood and my ability to like make the decision to put my phone down before midnight, like things like that. And one way that I've maybe streamlined or like not double handle things is that, so say I'm learning something at uni, I might do a thing on that. Or if I'm already researching something for an assignment, I could do a quick post or a quick graphic. I did that with the PEO model for my last assignment. I was looking into that for that, or re-looking into that. And so I made a little graphic.
Just synthesize your learning and it's sharing.
Exactly, because I really love teaching.
Yeah.
And so if I can synthesize this information that I've been looking at, well, then I can get that out to other people. And so then if I've done a graphic, well, do I do a blog post? And then do I do a worksheet that attaches? So I'm not double handling the work. Yeah. So I've done that with a few of them now. So sleep hygiene's the most recent one. So I did a blog, I did a graphic series, and now I've actually done a full worksheet, which is the most in-depth one I've done so far. It's got so much in there. Right. Lots of like, this is the standard sleep hygiene. These are ways you can, questions to ask yourself and ideas for adapting it. Just because typical sleep hygiene is really ableist. And doesn't work for all brains. Like I wasn't sure I was going to create a worksheet because I put the graphic series up. But actually I was like, no, I want this to actually be a bit more of it thing that people can kind of work through themselves. And it's got like a plan, like a sleep plan, pulls the information together for people. So I guess that's one way that I'm trying to, I guess, streamline what I'm doing. So
And
if something interesting pops up, I'll follow that and I'll use that in a couple of different places.
super smart. Because there's that motivation, and it's also very practical that you're not doing it double, but while you're motivated, just running with it. It's perfect. Now, people can find these things on chronicresilienceot.com, right?
Yeah, that's my website.
Okay. I love that. And is your blog on there too?
Yeah. The blog's there. There's all the worksheets are there. It's got details about contacting me if you do want to work with me. So I'm registered as an occupational therapist in New Zealand and Australia. So I can do OT in both countries, private only at the moment.
Yeah.
Just because the funding systems, it's really difficult to, as a sole person, having to do all that extra paperwork is just not where I'm at the moment. And I know that means that I won't be accessible for some people. And I don't love that. It's just what I need to do for myself at the moment.
And you don't
how I
have to
work.
be all things for all people. You're not responsible for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also love, so I've also been doing some mentoring for support workers, which has been absolutely great. And I even had somebody in the States reach out to me to do a consult, which is not even something that I advertise that I do, but they emailed me and we had a chat. So
Good.
I'm really keen on collaborations, and I'd love to be, like, I've got so many ideas and finite energy. So it's really difficult. I think it's that how to capture, because prioritizing is really hard as well. I'm like, oh my God, I've got all these things I want to do and I don't know where to start and end up in paralysis.
Yeah.
I love when people reach out to me, even if it's just to say like, hey, this really resonated with me. It means so much to know that people are seeing what I'm doing and it's useful. And people, like, if, I'm really happy for people to reach out for a one-off, or before people work with me, I'll chat to them for half an hour because I want to make sure that it's a good fit.
Yeah.
I don't just, want to assume anything, or want to make sure that what I offer is accurate, is right at this time for the person, especially because I live in a very small town, and so I'm not doing a lot of face-to-face, and not everybody can do online. Like, I had to do online therapy in Melbourne and that during lockdowns, and I really did not enjoy it. I really, really struggled with it. So I understand that online's not what suits everybody. If you want to chuck funding at me to run some peer support groups for people with various things, please do. And
okay, your ideal population, though, are adults. Like it says on your website, with a focus on well-being, self-management, and meaningful activity, supporting adults to live well with chronic physical and mental illness.
Yeah.
Very succinct. Yeah. Those are your people.
That's my, yeah. And that messaging on the website, it's who I am. There's no bullshit.
No.
That's the first time I've actually sworn. I managed to hold it in. It's not me pretending or, that is just me. That's who I am. There's photos all over of me and my dog and me being me. And the nature, like all those nature photos are photos I've taken in my local area. It's just, it is me. It is who I am. I want to show up authentically. Like, that is so important to me.
Yeah.
That I am able to be me in the spaces that I'm in. And I'm still learning bits of who that is as I learn to unmask where it's safe and to find, 6 months ago, I would never have dreamed of like being open about a fidget. Even 3 months ago, and being able to step into that space and step into autistic and ADHD identity and really embrace that. And yes, there's lots of struggles, and it's part of who I am, and I'm still learning bits about what that means. And that's okay. Like, I don't have to have it all figured out. And this is, it's a really interesting, we haven't talked hugely about this mindset piece with just giving things a go and doing the private practice. And of course there's imposter stuff. I love your term, imposter monster, rather than imposter syndrome. Absolutely, there's an imposter monster. There's an imposter monster when I'm in autistic spaces. I'm like, am I autistic enough to be in this space? So there's absolutely that going on. But interestingly, with the private practice OT, it's not there so much. And that's fascinating because it's been huge in my employed roles.
Yeah.
And then in the private practice, it's where you think it'd be there even more because I'm doing my own thing and stepping out by
Yeah.
myself and stuff. And it's still there, but it's not crippling. I mean, it's not, maybe not even important to know the why of that, but I'm doing what I care about and I'm doing what I think is important and I'm showing up authentically. In workplaces, it's difficult to show up entirely authentically.
And
But when you're working,
what I observe in you, though, is there's a confidence that you know something that is of benefit to your client, in that you have a unique position as the person with lived experience, and you recognize that as a value, not something to hide. And it sounds like there was a time where you made that shift. And
mm,
in that, you can stand confidently going, well, if I'm not for you, I don't need you. Like, you don't have
yep,
to have a giant business. You have some income coming somewhere else. You need a few clients for your half day. And so you have some latitude to go, well, let's just be me and the right people, that I can be an asset to the right people. And so just keep on keeping on. And that is beautiful. That is beautiful. And you did
yeah,
that
and
by design.
yeah, and it's so interesting because I've always been quite cautious and hesitant and methodical, and I'm still those things. I've got spreadsheets and keep track of lots of things and manage the finances really well. I did see an accountant, and he was basically, keep doing what you're doing. You're all good. You don't need me.
Perfect.
So it's been a learning curve, and I don't have automated systems. When you get an email from me, it's from me.
Yeah.
There's no automated reminders. There's none of that. At the moment, I don't even have like an email program. I might send, if you're on my email list, I might send one out once a month. It's just from me.
Yeah.
It's not even going through a fancy program. If you want to unsubscribe, please email me back.
Yeah.
I guess it goes back to that. What is the smallest bits that you need? And so if I was paying for an electronic record system, it's at least $50 a month. And well, that's a lot of money over a year when my business in the last financial year, it was made a loss, which is unsurprising given I was setting it up and
Yeah.
doing a bunch of things and gathering resources. I do want to make some money.
Yep.
And so it's trying to keep costs. I lost my point. Oh no. No, it's gone.
But it's your minimum viable product. So you've kept costs low. You don't have a lot of fancy stuff. And that's, yeah, by design, you've done that intentionally, which helps
Yeah.
you feel that it just needs to be this. It doesn't,
Yeah.
it's not a pressure to go and market for more and make it something it's not. You
No.
appreciate it as it is.
Yeah. And also, I created my own initial assessment template based on MoHo and well-being kind of stuff that I wanted to ask. And then I'm not even sure that even, like just how to show up not as the expert.
Mm.
So I have lots of knowledge. I have lots of useful knowledge from my lived experience and from my training, but I am not the expert in the person that I'm talking to. They are the expert. And so how can I hold space and make suggestions and maybe tweak some stuff? But I'm not going in there, and I've been learning this recently. If I go in there really task focused and do this, do this, do this, it's not going to land.
No.
It's the whole motivational interviewing stuff. It's got to come from the person. If they're not ready to change, or the homework task is something that you've set and not something that they're into, it's not going to get done.
No. No. Yeah. You have to let go of any agenda, which is so freeing to go, okay, I just need to show up for this session as me and be really curious and
Yeah.
flexible and responsive. I can
And
do that any day.
not needing to know all the answers as well. And I think that it does come with experience, but I don't necessarily have to go in with a session plan.
No.
And in some ways, a session plan stifles the creativity of the session,
Exactly.
And so being able to go in and be like, oh, actually, that's a really interesting question. Should we look that up together?
Mhm.
Or, hey, let me have a look at that and I'll get back to you next week. Like, we don't have to have it all at on the front
No.
part of our brain all the time. I have a shocking memory. It's not that I don't know stuff, it's in there, but what gets retained is this vague generalization. And then if I need to know more detail, I need to go back to a written resource or a visual, or there's some amazing resources out there. And I'd rather point a client to, hey, have a look at this, and then let's chat about it next week.
Yeah.
Rather than come in as I'm the expert in this, and it just, nah.
I love it.
And so many of our systems are set up like that with the funding, is the health professional is the expert. And it's like, no,
No.
we have some expertise.
And truly, I think our magic is in the way we look at the situation. That's our unique skill set, is that our perspective on context, environment, person, environment, occupation. How do we optimize their performance within their desires, their values? And we're approaching the problem solving with a unique perspective that does that. And what the answer isn't our expertise.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just being able to show up and be representing the profession. I love that. This profession means so much to me, and I love what OTs are doing and the range of things that they're doing and thinking outside the box and doing all the different stuff like that you're doing. And there's so many OTs that are expanding the profession in a wonderful way. There's some issues with erosion of scope with some other professions trying to muscle in on stuff as well. But this expansive view of what OT is, and OT is anything, because occupation is anything you spend your time on.
Mm-hmm.
And so the scope of OT is literally anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I love the variety of that it's always different. And
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. So cool.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk for hours and hours.
I
might not
know.
want to listen. I have a couple questions I ask everybody. What does being brave mean to you?
It's possibly similar to how I see resilience, in that it's do I want to use the word dialectic? I'm so steeped into some DBT stuff because of work.
That's okay.
But just brave can be like fear, and braveness can be fierce, but braveness can be soft as well. It's kind of finding what's important to you and doing it, even when it scares the shit out of you.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be I am bold, facing the fears. It can be like,
no,
okay, I'm going to send a message, and this is hard, and I'm really proud of it because it's really values aligned.
Yeah. One thing that takes a lot of bravery for me is phone calls.
Yeah. I
will avoid a phone call at all costs if I possibly can. Do they have an online booking system? Great. But I think it's that, whatever that saying is feeling the fear and showing up anyway. It's very much that. And it can be really little steps. They may not even always be forward steps.
Yeah.
As well. It can be brave to do the unknown and to be doing something different. And that's what I see so many OTs doing, is stepping into this unknown and creating their own spaces.
Or to say, oh, you know what? I am not going to do this thing that's somehow expected of me.
Yep. Saying no is brave.
Yeah.
As well. It's not always a yes. It's not always a forward. Sometimes it's actually, that's too much. And no.
What is something brave you've done recently?
This podcast?
Yes. You messaged me after a conversation, said, hey, I would be interested. And we did it. Like, it's so exciting. Especially for someone who avoids phone calls, right?
I know, right? Yeah, I guess just, the putting myself out there and the being vulnerable and finding that line of how much vulnerability to share and actually like reaching out to you and going, hey, I'd like to be on your podcast. That's brave.
That was.
And doing this and being out there. And this morning it felt brave to get out of bed, to be honest. Like I was having a hard time waking up early to be up, and I am still in my pajamas under this jumper. Like because of the time difference, it's very early morning in New Zealand. And so this morning it was brave to get out of bed. And sometimes that is what the day is that it's brave. It can be brave to take your meds. It can be brave to, there's so many things just to keep going.
Yeah. How would you like to see OTs get a little bit more brave?
Being confident in what we do and the value of what we do. So often it's people aren't confident in the definition of occupational therapy. And it is hard because it's such a broad profession, but I'd love to see OTs being more confident with that, confident with the uniqueness of our perspective and showing up for that and advocating for OT in spaces where there aren't OTs. I'm doing that in my current workplace. It's so important. And as our understanding of neurodivergence and intersections of everything evolve, OTs are superbly placed to be in every setting. And I believe we should be in every setting, including government and policy, determining what is accessibility and advocating for universal design and occupational justice and all these amazing concepts that can change people's lives. And it may not feel like you've got the scope to do that in your little space of the world, but you do. Every OT can show up for the profession and advocate for the profession and be strong in your OT identity and the value that you bring as part of that identity.
Those are beautiful words. Beautiful words.
That just like came out of my brain.
I know. You're going to need to transcribe that when it comes out. That was really good.
Yeah, I might need to quote myself there.
Totally. Is that a weird thing? Sometimes I did that on an online thing this morning. I finished with something and everybody went with that. And I thought, is it weird to write a quote from myself on social media?
I've got a quote from myself on my website. Yeah.
It's good when you know when it lands, because so often we ramble around in trying to explain something, and sometimes it's like, those were the words.
There it is.
Yeah.
So
people can find you on chronicresilience.com, and you also said
chronicresilienceot.com.
OT.com. Okay, perfect. Yeah. And I'll link that in the show notes. But you also have a Facebook page. Where else? How do you want people to find you?
That's kind of it, really. I'm not on other social media because I already spend enough time on Facebook. So on Facebook, I'm the Chronically Resilient OT.
Okay.
So you can find me there. And my website's kind of got all the other stuff about how to contact me. I really prefer emails to Facebook Messenger. Like I've got an auto reply set up saying, please contact me through my website. Messenger. Just trying to keep things a little streamlined, especially if people are contacting, like wanting to collaborate or consult or something like that. It definitely needs to go through the email. But the blogs and the worksheets, it's all there. I do also have a site on Teachers Pay Teachers with the worksheets, but they're all on my website too.
Okay. And so these are worksheets that OTs might be able to use in working with people with chronic conditions, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and people could use them themselves as well. Like obviously they're not therapy advice, but there's things like checking in with yourself at the end of the day. There's a worksheet on accommodations, a bit of a thought process of what helps you, what makes things difficult. There's one on sleep hygiene. I've got like personalized pain and fatigue scales because the 1 to 10 doesn't. Everyone's 1 to 10 looks different. So I've, made a template for that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of across. There's stuff on sensory processing. That's a real interest area of mine as well. So I think there's 9 of them up so far, and stuff will sporadically come out as I get to it.
Yep.
There's something comes out every Monday. I'm not doing that because then it becomes this thing that I'm like, I have to, and then that's a recipe for burnout for me. So stuff comes out as it comes out. Contact me if you like what I'm doing. And I'll continue to show up as I am and doing what I do and doing the bits that are important to me and hopefully offering something that's really valuable.
I've been thinking about a workshop that the only obstacle to running the workshop is that I find all of the lead up and follow up of the workshop that part exhausts me. I like doing the actual thing. And I've been thinking about maybe we need to work on this together. But one, offering OTs who own businesses a space to reflect on their business in a way of thinking about accommodations. What accommodations do I need to put into place for myself in my business? If I was to go and show up and be your OT or your OT, I have all sorts of ideas, but we don't tend to look at our own businesses through an accommodation lens. And that would be a cool workshop. I feel like maybe
Oh,
that
I'd
would
love
be
to collaborate. Send me an email.
Okay. Let's do it.
Because, I'm so passionate about that. And it's really hard to OT yourself.
It
And,
is.
I've had 10 years of practice with,
Yeah.
with chronic illness and stuff, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm still learning where the edges are because the edges change. So it's tough. And we think about making our spaces accommodating or our processes accommodating for the people who might try and reach us. Well, what does that look like for us?
Yeah.
Is it making it clear that actually I'm not going to phone call you? I'll do a video chat or a phone call if I have to, but between then it's email
Mhm.
or texting. Like, just being really clear about what we need and being okay to be clear with what we need as well. I think there's
That's the
this
key. Yeah.
perception that we have to be perfect or not unwell or not having our own stuff go on. And it's just, well, I'm a human too.
Yeah.
And you want me to show up in my humanness. You don't want me to be a robot. Otherwise you wouldn't have contacted me. So how can
Ooh,
we show up in our humanness?
you know what I
And
think is
yeah,
that so I'm curious if like, because you leaned into calling yourself the chronically resilient OT, that you're claiming the identity. And therefore, that's why you're less concerned about, like, that you're able to give it a go because you've dropped any sense of needing to be anything else because you've actually fully committed to this in the name, it's in the website, it's in everything. So actually, there's really not a lot to fear.
yeah. And that was really intentional.
Mhm.
I was like, this is how I want to show up.
Yeah.
This is my OT and my lived experience coming together
Yeah.
to offer something that won't be for everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I want to call myself this because this is how I want to show up.
Mhm.
And like I said, it's me. It's not a persona. And that is in all my messaging and what I share and how I show up and what I called myself, that was very intentional.
Mhm.
That I wanted from the get go, as soon as people had any contact with me, that they would know what I was about.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder what the lesson. So, like, thinking about, because obviously you and I have talked before. I know you as the chronically resilient OT. Like, we've talked about, I've got this, give it a go. I don't know why I'm not fearful in this space. And clearly I'm coming to realizations in layers too. But I'm thinking about the listener and what can they lean into and claim to be able to drop the fear of having to be something they're not. 'Cause ultimately, isn't that where that suffering might be?
Well, yeah, if I can model being open and authentic in my identities as a multiply disabled, does that give permission for
Yeah,
a potential client to do that too?
yeah,
If they can see, or other OTs, if they can see that I'm doing this and I'm showing up and the world hasn't ended, that it's okay. And I think we are seeing this more and more as well with all the advocates and
yep,
people being really honest about their lived experience and about their diagnoses. And I think it's really powerful. And then that modeling as well, or maybe there's a teenager. Oh, and I did speak to a teenager who wanted to be an OT but wasn't sure she could
mm,
because of chronic illness. So it's that if they can see that someone's doing it,
yeah,
or somebody in OT school or who's not sure they can finish, if they can see that there's room to be yourself, even when that's different. Oh, again, I'm dropping some gems. Oh my gosh. No, it's just, that is, if just me showing up and owning that identity means that someone else is okay to be more authentic, then I've done what I set out to do. I'm not here to have a big business. I am here to be me. And if that supports somebody else to, or even support maybe someone else is like, oh, I wonder if I'm this thing because of something I've written. And allowing that space for people to question and to be, oh, I'm not sure, or hey, I want to do this thing, but I don't think it's possible. Well, maybe it is possible. Maybe it's not. Maybe there are too many barriers that aren't solvable or accommodatable.
Or maybe you don't need to be the one to fight all of them.
Yeah. And do you need some support to fight the battles? And but what if it is possible?
What if it is?
And if I can be who I want to be, and that means somebody else feels more okay being who they are, that is the magic right there. That is why I do what I do. Like, you know, I'm
yeah.
That is why I do what I do.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing what you do. It's beautiful. It's good. And I so appreciate you being brave to show up and have this conversation, share everything you have. And thank you for being, big part of the OT community.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. Like, it feels like I'm too new to be part of, be a kind of force in the OT community. And I'm like, oh no, but I'm really happy to step into that. It just some of that imposter stuff comes in. I'm like, oh, but I've only been doing this for like less than 4 years.
I think
and a lot of that non-traditionally.
You're a natural change maker though, right? I think it's because you see the world differently. And then you bring in an OT profession with your different way of looking at the world. And that does not require you to have been an OT for 10 years. It's new perspectives that we need. And so thank you for sharing yours.
Yeah. Oh, I love talking about OT, and this has been really wonderful I know we've gone on for a long time. You're probably going to have to edit quite a lot of this, but I'll just have a really long podcast episode.
Part 5 hours podcast.
When 2 ADHDers get together, it turns into a long podcast.
Totally. I've been making it a goal to insert some 10-minute ones because a lot of ADHDers don't want to listen to a 2-hour podcast. But we're sure happy to create one. And so I've been thinking I need to intersperse like little 10-minute monologues or little snippets of like little gems so that we can have that variety. But man, I can't make them yet. I will.
Thank you so much, Carlin. This has been, it's been really wonderful. I'm glad I was brave and reached out. And
thank you. If you made it through both part 1 and part 2 and listened with interest, thank you. I know it was a long conversation, but valuable, so I couldn't edit any of it out. It was a great discussion that meandered and dove deep with our neurodivergence, and I expected no less when talking to Rebecca, whose integrity I admire very much. Make sure you visit her resources shop at chronicalresilienceot.com. I've put a link in the show notes. And don't forget to leave a review or a rating for the Brave OT podcast if you've been enjoying it. As always, be brave, OTs.